Ambrose Burnside stood before Lincoln's desk, trembling hands clasped behind his back. He begged the president, "Refuse my promotion. I'm not ready to command this army." Lincoln smiled wearily, pressed the commission into Burnside's palm, and sealed the fate of thousands. December 13th, 1862. Morning fog clung to Fredericksburg streets like a burial shroud. Confederate soldiers watched from Marye's heights as Union engineers hammered pontoon bridges across the icy Rappahannock. Someone whispered, "They're building their own coffins down there." Robert Lee surveyed the battlefield from his horse, Traveler. The terrain formed a natural amphitheater, his artillery commanding every approach. James Longstreet rode beside him, gesturing toward the stone wall below. Lee nodded slowly. "A chicken couldn't survive crossing that field," Longstreet said quietly. Behind that 4-foot stone wall along the sunken road, Georgia and North Carolina infantry stacked rails and dirt. 4 ranks deep, they could fire continuous volleys without pause. Thomas Cobb commanded these men. He promised his wife he'd return for Christmas. She never saw him alive again. Burnside's plan relied on speed and numbers overwhelm Lee before he concentrated his forces. But Union pontoon bridges arrived late. Engineers worked under Confederate sniper fire, bodies tumbling into the freezing current. 3 precious days vanished. Lee's entire army arrived and fortified the heights above. French's division formed first. Blue lines stretching across the meadow. Officers adjusted swords. Sergeants checked cartridge boxes. Young soldiers wrote final letters home, tucking them inside coat pockets. The brigade stepped forward at noon. Artillery opened immediately. Men disappeared in explosions of frozen earth. Confederate gunners aimed deliberately, reloading with mechanical precision. Each cannonball carved crimson paths through advancing ranks. Federal soldiers stumbled over bodies of friends, reformed lines, continued upward. The stone wall erupted with musket fire. The first assault collapsed before reaching halfway. Survivors crawled backward through their own blood. Burnside watched through field glasses, jaw clenched, refusing to believe his eyes. He ordered the second wave forward, then the third. Division commanders protested, "This is murder, not warfare." Burnside's voice rose to a shout, "Attack again!" His staff exchanged horrified glances. Nobody dared countermand him. I led my 20th Maine across that killing field during the 5th assault. Beside me, my younger brother Thomas gripped his rifle with white knuckles. Something hot tore through my thigh. I kept running. Thomas caught me before I fell. We retreated together, leaving scores behind. Behind the stone wall, Confederate soldiers fired until rifle barrels burned their hands. Cartridge boxes emptied. They grabbed ammunition from dead comrades. One Georgian wrote later, "We simply pointed downhill and pulled triggers. There were so many targets, missing became impossible. Still they came." Irish Brigade Commander Thomas Meagher ordered green sprigs placed in his soldiers' caps, ancient Celtic tradition before battle. His New York regiments charged singing, voices defiant against Confederate thunder. Within 20 minutes, the brigade ceased to exist as fighting force. Green sprigs littered the frozen ground like spring flowers. A wounded Union lieutenant named Owen crawled behind a small rise 50 yards from the wall. Confederate bullets thudded into corpses surrounding him. He counted 14 separate Union charges throughout the afternoon. Each time, new bodies piled atop old ones. He lay there until darkness, pretending death. Darkness brought no relief, only amplified horror. Thousands of wounded men screamed across the meadow, crying for water, calling mothers' names, begging for death. Confederate soldiers heard their own language, Irish accents, German words. One rebel wept openly. "They're just like us down there. Why won't they stop?" Confederate Sergeant Richard Kirkland couldn't bear the anguished cries any longer. He filled canteens, climbed over the stone wall into no man's land. Both armies held fire, mesmerized, as he gave water to dying enemies. Union soldiers called him Angel of Marye's Heights. 9 months later, Chickamauga bullets killed him. Burnside's headquarters descended into chaos as night deepened. General officers argued, voices rising toward mutiny. Some demanded Burnside's arrest. He sat alone afterward, hands covering his face, muttering, "I should have listened. Lincoln was right. I wasn't ready. Tomorrow, I'll lead the assault myself." His staff physically prevented him. Union soldier Elisha Hunt Rhodes wrote in his diary that night, "We might as well have tried to take hell itself." The stone wall vomited fire continuously. We advanced into death with perfect discipline. Our courage meant nothing against their position. God help General Burnside's soul. Lee watched the carnage with conflicted emotions. Victory felt hollow, witnessing such slaughter. He remarked to Longstreet, "It's good war is so terrible, or we might grow too fond of it." Longstreet replied nothing, remembering his own children who died from fever that year. War took everyone's children eventually. Morning revealed the true cost. Union bodies covered the slope in organized rows where regiments fell. Many wounded had frozen overnight, caught between fires. Truces allowed burial parties forward. Confederate and Union soldiers worked together silently, digging common graves. Nobody spoke. What words existed for this? Federal casualties exceeded 12,000 men. Confederate losses numbered barely 5,000. The disparity spoke volumes about defensive warfare's new mathematics. Rifled muskets and artillery transformed Napoleonic tactics into suicide. Every military academy would study, Fredericksburg usually titled, "What Never to Attempt." Among the Confederate dead lay Thomas Cobb, shot while commanding the stone wall's defense. His wife received his final letter weeks later. He'd written about their children, promised Christmas reunion, described the impregnable position he held. She kept that letter until her own death, 60 years afterward. Private Thomas Galway survived 6 charges across that field. His brother Michael died during the 4th. Thomas found him during darkness, carried the body back across the Rappahannock. He never spoke of Fredericksburg afterward, not to his wife, not to his children. Some memories couldn't be translated into words. Lincoln received Burnside's report 3 days later. The president aged visibly while reading. He told his cabinet, "If there's a worse place than hell, I am in it." Democrats seized upon the disaster, demanding negotiated peace. Lincoln refused. The war would continue until slavery ended or the nation did. Burnside attempted one final offensive in January, the infamous Mud March. Winter rains transformed Virginia roads into impassable swamps. Wagons sank axle deep, artillery pieces disappeared into mud. Soldiers carved signs mocking their commander, sticking them roadside. Burnside stuck here. Lincoln relieved him shortly after. Nobody protested. Joseph Hooker replaced Burnside, promising aggressive action. Soldiers cheered initially, hoping for competent leadership. 6 months later, at Chancellorsville, Lee defeated Hooker even more decisively than Burnside. The Army of the Potomac developed dark humor about their commanders. "We're undefeated at losing," they joked bitterly. The stone wall stood unmolested for months afterward. Local residents avoided the area too many ghosts, they whispered. Farmers plowing nearby fields continually unearthed buttons, bullets, bone fragments. Union soldiers finally captured Marye's Heights in May 1863. They advanced cautiously, expecting ambush. The wall stood empty. Fredericksburg civilians emerged from cellars after the battle, surveying devastation. Homes riddled with bullets, churches converted to hospitals, blood-staining floors and walls. Clara Barton arrived to nurse wounded from both armies. She worked 72 hours without sleep. Later she said, Fredericksburg convinced her America needed organized relief. You stand where the stone wall was. Close your eyes. Hear phantom screams echoing across the meadow. Feel December wind carrying whispers of 12,000 casualties. This ground remembers. Soil still yields bullets, buttons, bones. Walk carefully. You're treading on America's broken heart, where brothers murdered brothers for politicians' ambitions. Union survivors held reunions, but Fredericksburg veterans rarely attended. The memories cut too deep. One Irish Brigade member explained, "We charged impossible positions before and after Fredericksburg. But something about that stone wall, the way bodies stacked upon bodies, it broke something inside us that never healed properly." Modern historians debate Burnside's motivations endlessly. Was he incompetent or unlucky? Stubborn or pressured by Washington politicians? Perhaps the answer matters less than the result. 14 separate frontal assaults against an impregnable position, 12,000 casualties. One commander's inability to admit defeat until darkness made further attacks impossible. The battle revealed rifled weapons' defensive advantage lessons. European armies ignored 50 years later on the Western Front. Machine guns replaced stone walls, but the mathematics remained identical. attacking fortified positions with infantry produced industrial-scale slaughter. Fredericksburg was World War I's rehearsal, nobody recognizing the script. Lee's tactical brilliance at Fredericksburg created strategic problems. The overwhelming victory convinced him Confederate armies could defeat any Union attack. This confidence led to Gettysburg 7 months later. Sometimes, total triumph plants seeds of future disaster. Lee never fought another defensive battle like Fredericksburg. Offensive warfare eventually destroyed his army. Among Fredericksburg's wounded was young Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., future Supreme Court Justice. A bullet pierced his foot during the third assault. He limped thereafter, refusing to discuss the battle publicly. Privately, Holmes said the war killed his faith in grand causes. Afterward, he trusted only law's cold logic. Burnside lived 33 years after Fredericksburg, serving as Rhode Island governor and senator. He never escaped that day's shadow. During every political campaign, opponents circulated casualty figures. Burnside defended his decisions half-heartedly. Knowing truth wouldn't resurrect dead soldiers. He died quietly in September 1881. Few attended his funeral. The sunken road where Confederate soldiers fought became a national landmark. Visitors walked the path, touching stone wall remnants, imagining impossible courage required to charge uphill into concentrated fire. Park rangers recount the battle, voices dropping respectfully. Everyone leaves silently, contemplating humanity's capacity for organized violence. Fredericksburg citizens eventually rebuilt their town. Though bullet scars marked buildings for generations, they erected monuments honoring both armies unusual in a region dominated by Confederate memorials. The town's post-war motto became, "We suffered together, let us heal together." Reconciliation began where the slaughter occurred. Chaplain Arthur Fuller died leading his regiment's third assault. His sister, Margaret Fuller, famous transcendentalist writer, had drowned a decade earlier. Both siblings believed deeply in human perfectibility, progress's inevitable march. Fredericksburg's carnage mocked such optimism. Arthur's final letter home asked, "How do we reconcile Christian love with this systematic murder?" Confederate artillerist Edward Porter Alexander watched the battle from his gun position. He wrote years later, "I had never seen such perfect discipline under fire. Those Federal soldiers advanced knowing death awaited, yet maintained formation until cut down. We didn't feel victorious, we felt ashamed of the slaughter." The battle occurred during Christianity's holiest season, Advent, leading toward Christmas. Soldiers on both sides carried Bibles, sang hymns around campfires, prayed before charging. Religious faith somehow coexisted with industrialized killing. This contradiction troubled thoughtful soldiers forever. How does a Christian soldier reconcile commandment and duty? Burnside's facial hairstyle connecting mustache and sideburns became known as sideburns in his honor. This remains his primary legacy, a grooming fashion named for a general whose greatest battle achievement was surviving 14 consecutive tactical failures. History sometimes remembers us for the strangest reasons. Confederate soldier Barry Benson described Fredericksburg simply, "We stood behind a wall and killed men who walked toward us. They fell in rows. New rows came. We killed them too." This continued all afternoon. At dusk, the field was carpeted with dead. We climbed over the wall and wept. The Irish Brigade's green flags, shot to tatters at Fredericksburg, hung in New York's St. Patrick's Cathedral for decades. Veterans gathered there annually, numbers dwindling. The last survivor died in 1928. He was buried with a green sprig in his hand, one final connection to that frozen meadow. Lincoln visited Fredericksburg's wounded in Washington hospitals. He moved bed to bed, holding soldiers' hands, listening to stories. One dying private told him, "Mr. President, we didn't fail you. Our generals failed us." Lincoln reportedly wept openly. He rarely displayed emotion publicly before Fredericksburg. The battle changed him profoundly. Modern metal detector enthusiasts still find artifacts buried along Marye's Heights bullets, buttons, belt buckles, canteens. Each discovery represents one soldier's story, now lost. The National Park Service collects these items, cataloging humanity's debris. Museums display them behind glass. Visitors stare silently, touching barriers, reaching toward vanished lives. Robert Lee's tactical masterpiece at Fredericksburg demonstrated defensive warfare's future. However, the Confederacy needed offensive victories to win independence. Defense exhausted Southern resources through attrition. Fredericksburg's success paradoxically accelerated Confederate defeat by encouraging defensive thinking. Sometimes, winning battles loses wars. Strategy always outweighs tactics. Union soldier Jesse Bowman Young survived all 14 assaults, later becoming a Methodist minister. His sermons frequently referenced Fredericksburg. He preached, "I witnessed hell on earth that December day, yet somehow, amid carnage, I also witnessed transcendent courage, sacrifice, and love. Humanity contains both capacities simultaneously. Choose which you'll express." The pontoon bridges Burnside's engineers built became escape routes during the Union retreat. Men crossed silently, avoiding eye contact, shoulders slumped. Engineers dismantled bridges after the last soldier passed. The Rappahannock ran black that night, mixture of gunpowder residue and blood washing downstream. Fish died by thousands. Fredericksburg newspapers, Southern sympathetic before the war, printed casualty lists for both armies afterward. The editor wrote, "Victory brings no joy when the meadow outside town holds 12,000 bodies. They were Americans all. We have murdered our nation's future, regardless of which flag claims triumph." Walt Whitman arrived in Fredericksburg searching for his wounded brother. He found field hospitals packed with mutilated soldiers, surgeons operating continuously, amputated limbs piled like cordwood. Whitman stayed, nursing wounded for weeks. The experience transformed his poetry from romantic celebration to tragic witness. Reality murdered romanticism completely. "I recovered from my Fredericksburg wound, returned to command, survived the war, became Maine governor. I carried a limp forever. During political speeches, opponents sometimes mocked my gait. I would pause, stare coldly, and say, 'I earned this limp charging hell itself.' What did you earn?" James Longstreet defended the stone wall brilliantly, then watched Union soldiers slaughtered all afternoon. He converted to defensive warfare advocacy afterward. At Gettysburg, he begged Lee to avoid offensive action. Lee ignored him. Longstreet spent remaining years proving Fredericksburg's lesson. Defensive tactics with rifled weapons dominated 19th century battlefields. The battle occurred 18 months into a war both sides initially expected to last weeks. Fredericksburg shattered remaining illusions about quick victory. Soldiers understood this conflict would consume an entire generation. Mothers stopped waving sons off to adventure. They wept at departures, knowing probable outcomes. Innocents died at Fredericksburg. Confederate soldiers defending Marye's Heights came from 7 different states. They spoke various dialects, practiced different customs, argued about everything except one point: slavery's preservation. Fredericksburg's defenders fought brilliantly, protecting an immoral cause. Courage and justice don't always align. History remembers their valor, condemns their purpose. Union Medical Corps treated wounded for 3 days straight without rest. Surgeons amputated limbs until their arms trembled from exhaustion. Chloroform supplies ran out quickly. Men endured surgery awake, biting leather straps, screaming. Nurses held patients down during operations. Many medical personnel required psychological treatment afterward. Some never recovered. Fredericksburg's lessons spread slowly through military establishments worldwide. Prussia studied the battle before the Franco-Prussian War. British officers analyzed it before the Boer War. Japanese generals reviewed it before attacking Port Arthur. Nobody learned fast enough. Defensive firepower kept slaughtering attacking infantry until 1918. The Rappahannock River froze solid in late December 1862. Soldiers walked across ice, retrieving wounded men left in no man's land. Both armies maintained informal truce during these missions. Enemies worked together, carrying frozen bodies to respective lines. Humanity occasionally transcended uniforms. Usually, death made such cooperation irrelevant. Abraham Lincoln drafted the Emancipation Proclamation while Burnside planned Fredericksburg's attack. The president signed it January 1st, 1863, 3 weeks after the battle. Fredericksburg's carnage strengthened Lincoln's resolve. If soldiers died defending the Union, that Union must stand for something beyond mere geography. Freedom became the cause. Richard Kirkland, the Angel of Marye's Heights, became legendary in both armies. His compassion toward dying enemies inspired thousands. Letters home mentioned him frequently. When Kirkland died at Chickamauga, both Union and Confederate newspapers published obituaries. Small acts of mercy echo louder than great victories. Kindness survives when battles fade. The stone wall at Fredericksburg still stands partially intact, protected by the National Park Service. Tourists touch the stones, imagining Confederate soldiers crouching behind it, loading, firing, reloading endlessly. The wall feels cold year-round, regardless of temperature. Perhaps memory chills stone. Perhaps stones remember blood they've witnessed. Ambrose Burnside never commanded combat troops again after the Mud March. Lincoln transferred him west, where he governed occupied Tennessee competently. Burnside succeeded as an administrator but failed as battlefield commander. History pigeonholes people by their worst moments. Fredericksburg defined Burnside forever, despite later achievements. Redemption proved impossible. Confederate victory at Fredericksburg encouraged European nations, especially Britain and France, to consider recognizing Southern independence. However, Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation made the war explicitly about slavery. European governments, facing domestic abolitionist pressure, couldn't support the Confederacy without endorsing human bondage. Fredericksburg's strategic impact vanished through Lincoln's political genius. Union soldiers who survived Fredericksburg developed dark gallows humor. They sang parody songs around campfires. "We'll rally round the stone wall, boys, and charge straight into hell." New recruits found this cynicism disturbing. Veterans explained, "You'll understand after your first assault." Innocence and experience spoke different languages. The battle demonstrated photography's limitations. Matthew Brady's photographers couldn't capture combat exposure times required minutes, not seconds. They photographed aftermath, corpse, strewn fields, destroyed buildings, wounded soldiers. These images shocked Northern civilians. Romanticized war illustrations collided with photographic reality. Public opinion shifted slightly. Slightly wasn't enough yet. Modern historians estimate Fredericksburg's total casualties killed, wounded, captured, missing approached 15,000 Union soldiers versus 5,000 Confederates. The 3-to-1 ratio reflected defensive advantage. Yet the North could replace losses, the South couldn't. Fredericksburg was Confederate Pyrrhic victory, winning tactically while losing strategically through unsustainable attrition. 7 Medals of Honor were awarded for Fredericksburg actions. Recipients included soldiers who carried wounded comrades under fire, captured enemy flags, and led desperate charges. Courage wasn't scarce that day, competent leadership was. Ordinary soldiers displayed extraordinary valor compensating for their commanders' failures. They deserved better generals. Fredericksburg endures as cautionary tale about pride, stubbornness, and failure to adapt tactics to technology. The stone wall symbolizes military incompetence's human cost. Walk that meadow today. Feel the ground where thousands fell. Remember, they died because commanders refused admitting error. Their sacrifice demands we question authority, especially during war. Always question.